Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a new review video for you guys. Today we're going to be reviewing a BLI Norfolk & Western Class J Northern. It's a 484 steam engine here. This one, as you can see, is painted as 611 in the excursion service variant. And today I want to cover a few topics in this video. I want to begin by kind of taking a close look at this engine here. I want to discuss, kind of give a quick review of the BLI offering. I want to discuss the various Paragon, generational changes in this model, including comparing between Paragon 1 and Paragon 2, and then also Paragon 2 and Paragon 3. And I also want to discuss the variations that BLI had made, within each run. Because they didn't make just, this engine, they also made it in service, and they also made some other detail variations for different road numbers. So I wanted to kind of discuss that. And then I'm going to move to the main topic, which is, why I think the BLI Class J model is superior to the other offerings from other manufacturers, including MTH and Bachmann, notably. And also scale trains, which I'm going to just count as MTH because it's basically the same thing. And, share some opinions about that. But without further ado, let's get started. I want to quickly jump into some thoughts about this engine. So I kind of already spoiled it, but I think BLI did an outstanding job on their Class J engine. I think it's the best looking one overall. And so kind of want to show you guys a little bit around this engine. This is one of Broadway Limited's, earlier offerings. This was back when they still made everything out of plastic. So this engine has a plastic shell, plastic cab, plastic front, as well as a plastic tender shell. It's still fairly plastic, which is an indication that this is a Paragon 1 engine, because in future engines, they try to transition to die-cast, mainly because they were using smoke units, and smoke units don't really work well with plastic shells because they'll melt. But this was, clearly an earlier tooling engine. And so despite that, being made in the early 2000s, I believe it was like around 2008, this thing still looks really good for its age. I think it's aged very well, in fact. And if you compare this to, modern releases from BLI, I think it looks just as good, if not better, than some of them. As I said, I think they did really an outstanding job on this engine. The dimensions, so, for streamliners, the big things you're looking for is not detail, because, most streamliners don't have a lot of separately applied detail, but rather you want to look at the overall appearance and shape and dimensions of said streamlining. So in this case, it's much harder to kind of nail the shape of, for example, the skyline casing, this slight boiler bulge, and specifically the shape of the nose. This is a part that's really hard to get right, it seems. You look at, old Lionel O-scale engines or whatnot, they just all look really off, and it's a rather hard, profile to nail, especially with, plastic injection molding. It's actually easier in, brass, because you're using, you're shaping sheets of brass, whereas in plastic injection molding, you gotta, 3D model all this stuff. And it's really challenging to do right. So I think BLI absolutely hit it out of the park with this engine. I think the dimensions look fantastic. Overall shape just looks great compared to prototypes photos. And yeah, it looks good. As I said, there's not a lot of separately applied detail, but you don't really need that because there's not that much to separately apply. I mean, you got, this main silver handrail here. You got some piping underneath here. You got some basic stuff down here, including the cold water pump, as well as the stoker motor down here. And on the other side, you'll see the big throttle line for the front end throttle. You can see right there that is separately applied. So yeah, the stuff that you can see on the sides are separately applied. There's some, like this is kind of lazy, as like the two mechanical lubricators are just molded as one piece. Though to be fair, I haven't really seen it up close in person or in real life yet. But this power reverse, it looks okay. You don't really see it that closely anyways. Yeah, overall, this thing looks really good. As I said, it's a good, combination of not a lot of separately applied details, because the real life one didn't really have any. So there's really no complaints on that department. The paint looks really good. This particular version is a matte black finish, but you could see that they actually gave the stripe a nice satin finish. You can see it's much shinier than the dull, very matte black, which I thought was a really nice touch. It really shows on the tender as well. Like, look how shiny that striping is. It is beautiful. The lettering and the colors look really good. I think the maroon is, exactly what I would expect it to be. The lettering and font looks right. This tender looks fantastic. It looks just like the prototype. It's got a die-cast underbody, and got pickups, and, there's not a lot of stuff underneath, but you don't really need anything because you don't really see it anyways. You got some nice details in the rear. So yeah, overall, this engine looks really good. I think BLI really nailed it. I will say, in my opinion, the rivets are a little bit oversized. These are really noticeable on the model, but in real life, you don't really notice the rivets of the skyline casing, at least in my opinion. That is one thing, you know, it's so minor at that point. I'm literally counting rivets at that point. But yeah, at the top, you got a nice brass whistle, some nice brass safety valves, and the bell is located on this model down here, also brass. So again, just really really solid choices. The marker lights are also brass, and the front has a nice polished, you know, headlight trim, as well as some, you know, nice silver trimming around the skyline casing and the number boards. And again, it just overall looks really, really good. I want to cut in for a second and, you know, showcase a few more angles and views of the BLI engine here. A few more areas I think they did really well. I really like the print here. It's very fine and crisp. You got a nice little freestanding ladder there. A lot of empty void space back there, which is very cool. Yeah, you have this nice little label here. I really, really like. These stirrup steps are separately applied as well, which is nice to see. The engine has these little grills in the front, which was added to J classes after 1955, which is a nice little touch there. They're nice and visible. There's that vent. I think I already talked about that though. Yeah, just very pretty model. Yeah, very fine. Got a few, again, freestanding piping here. And you got the little Timken, I don't know if you can see that, little Timken labels on the bearings there, which is a really nice touch. Really like that. Yeah, so all around a very, very pretty model. A little view of the cab inside. Not painted at all, but good opportunity for you to kind of touch it up yourself and make it look a little nicer, personalized. And you got a little plastic drawbar here. This is, I'm always afraid of plastic drawbars. I feel like they're kind of fragile, but this one, you know, they did it because they wanted to add that auto retracting effect, where it retracts inwards when it's on a straight track, and when the engine's running on a curved track, it extends outward to negotiate those tight curves while maintaining a solid engine to tender spacing, which is something you don't see on, you know, the MTH model, for example. So anyways, back to the video. All right, so I think I've said enough praises about this engine. Now I want to kind of talk about my next topic, which is how, you know, the various variations that BLI has made. So as you can see here, this is the early Paragon 1 run. It's got no smoke unit. Instead, it's got a giant piece of lead weight inside the boiler. You can see it's actually got factory painted blackened, factory painted black metal front wheels, leading truck wheels. You can see that the rods are not blackened. They're nice and silver, which I really like. And you can see that there's actually this little J emblem here on the cylinders is actually painted gold, which is really cool. So those are some characteristic traits of the Paragon 1 run. Now, between Paragon 1 and Paragon 2, you had some changes. Notably, the leading truck wheels are no longer painted, but rather darkened, chemically darkened, as well as the side rods. Those are also darkened. You lost the gold of the emblem of the J on the cylinders. And then notably, the class lights here received the little jewels. You can see on my model, there actually are jewels already on this thing. That's because I actually changed these out. But the Paragon 1 class lights did not have little jewels in the marker. So that's really the only main difference I could spot between the Paragon 1 and Paragon 2 runs. Couldn't really see anything else. As I think I already said, they started adding smoke units inside the engines. And then between Paragon 2 and Paragon 3, the only difference I could notice was the fact that they changed the molded cold load you can see here in the Paragon 1 and Paragon 2 runs into a real cold load. They actually added some separately glued on coal. Otherwise, though, again, the Paragon runs seem virtually identical. The paint looks identical. There really is no other differences. I think I already mentioned, yeah, so the Paragon 3 one obviously also has a smoke unit, so engine weighs lighter. Personally, I prefer the weight. It means that it runs better, and, with a traction tire, it runs even better than that. But, like, Paragon 2 and Paragon 3, without the weight, you kind of have an unbalanced engine. You kind of rely on the traction tire more for pulling power. So I just prefer the weight. But overall, again, this is an excellent model. So those are the various differences between the Paragon runs if you want to help identify, what Paragon run your engine is. Now, as I said, that's just some differences, but actually even within, each Paragon run, you actually had some differences in detail and configuration, depending on the road number. So they made, as you can see here, this is 611, which is the most famous one. It's the one that was preserved. But they actually made 611 in like 3 different versions. They had the as delivered, they had this version, which is the excursion service, and then they have the museum version. And from what I could tell, the main differences between the 3 is one is the red striping is, I think, more red, like a brighter red, in the museum version or whatever, like the most recent version, basically trying to depict 611 in its today configuration. The red is slightly brighter. You have you actually have 2 generators, I believe, in certain runs. Whereas you can see this one only has 1 dynamo here. But in certain 611 configurations, again, depending on which one you get, you might see 2 dynamos. You might see 611 got upgraded with, you can see here, there's 2 rods, 2 slab rods here between the second and third drivers. On certain versions of 611, again, depending on which run you get, you might get one with a single slab. That was an upgrade that the 611 got, I don't know when, but it was definitely after, steam was gone from and the N&W. This was definitely something I believe this is something they changed after preservation years. So 611 had the 1 versus 2 generators, the single versus double slab rods, and then the striping color change. And then one more thing is the bearings on the trucks here. You can see these are roller bearings. These actually remind you of these should remind you of like the roller bearings you see on modern freight car trucks. You see those? So if you, that denotes that this model I have in front of me is meant to depict 611 in a, an excursion service, like way later down the line. You would not see, these in a as delivered 611 or, during the regular service. So if you choose to get so again, BLI made, multiple versions. So just figure out, which version you would like, depending on the era you model. And those are some really nice changes that BLI actually added to their engines to kind of differentiate between them. BLI also made some other road names. They didn't just make 611, of course. And in those engines, depending on which road name, you actually got some other differences. So in addition to everything I said, if you chose to get, for example, like number 600, that engine had a different tender shape. You actually had a curved, instead of a flat roof here, you actually had a curved, like arched roof. So BLI actually properly modified that. Those engines also, the earlier J classes in real life and in BLI form. So they had the arched tender deck. They also had the bell actually placed up here. You can see 611 here has the bell down here, which is correct. But the earlier N&W J classes had the bell actually located up here. So BLI actually did recreate that depending on which row number you got. Some of the BLI engines and the prototype engines had spoked leading wheels instead of the solid ones you can see here. And then also the crosshead. You can see here, this is the, I don't know what you call this type, but BLI was able to also replicate both styles of crossheads in their J-class models, which is really, really cool to see. I think that is everything. Bell location, lead truck type, tender deck shape, and crosshead. Yeah, okay, yeah. So those are variations that the J classes had in real life, and BLI was actually able to accurately reproduce those variations in their own models, which I think is amazing. Like, you don't see that these days. That's just so cool. The fact that they were able to vary the tooling so much. And again, that's just a really nice attention to detail. So that's all to say. I think BLI did an excellent job on their J-class model. It looks fantastic. So let's move on to the next topic, which is kind of, why I think, what this model has over the MTH, the scale trains, or the Bachmann engines. So we'll move on to that topic next. All right, so comparing the various manufacturers, J-class models. Unfortunately, with my small YouTube channel, I do not have the budget to buy, 3 more J-class models just for this one video. I don't make enough off YouTube to do that, and I also don't model N&W, so there's no reason for me to do that. But that being said, I would love to see them, together. It'd be really cool. But yeah, I have seen those other models in person. Like, I have friends of the club that have them. I've seen them run. I've seen them up close. I've also seen many, many pictures of them online. So I feel like I have some, ground to stand on for my opinion. I'm not just, like talking out of my butt here. But I think the main edge is the shape of the nose here. MTH and scale trains J classes have a really messed up front. I don't know what they did, but like the nose looks humongous on them. The bullet nose just looks much like larger in diameter and doesn't protrude as far. I don't know, but it just does not look anywhere close to what the prototype looks like as far as the front goes. They also they shrank the size of the pilot here. On their engines, the pilots are like hella raised above the track, so it just looks really wonky. So with the short pilot, it really extremifies the size of the bigger bullet nose. And so I think their model just looks really, really odd in that way. They also didn't do, the variations that BLI did. I think they did do the spoke wheels versus solid wheels, but I don't, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think they might have also done the arch tender deck, but I don't know if they changed all the variations that, BLI offered. They definitely did not add make the roller bearings versus the regular friction bearing variations in their 611. I know that for sure. But yeah, so MTH, their engine, just the front looks really weird. I don't think they got the boiler shape right either. And overall, like the tender truck area, not the tender truck, the trailing truck area here just looks really weird on their engine. If I were to take a look at the BLI one here, you can see it looks pretty solid. There's not a lot of gap, in the back there. It looks to be fairly filled in. On the MTH ones, I feel like they shrunk the trailing truck a lot. They made this thing much smaller, and they also just left a giant gap, hole around here. So there's a lot of space there, and it just looks kind of weird. It looks like the trailing truck is kind of, it looks more toy-like, I think. I feel like the fact that BLI kind of filled in the area more and didn't shrink the trailing truck as much is a much nicer look. I think the same can be said for the front here. I think they shrunk the cylinders and the leading truck maybe a little bit as well on the MTH. So yeah, I feel like BLI's J-Class just looks better than the MTH version. And then what's really sad is that Scale Trains, despite, having the opportunity to fix MTH mistakes and, change the tooling, they chose to not change anything at all. And they chose to sell it at a very premium price, which I would expect better for, a better model from than having not changed anything in the exterior, which is just, again, kind of sad. Like BLI's J-Class is more affordable. These are much cheaper on the used market. And anyway, Scale Trains just had the opportunity to make improvements on the overall, the shape of the front, and they just did not do anything. The last thing is the tender here. I think BLI nailed the shape of the tender. MTH really messed up the tender shape. I don't know what they did. I feel like they raised the coal bunker height and they shortened it. But the overall shape of the tender just looks nothing close to what the real life is or the BLI version. Yeah, I don't know how they messed it up so bad. It looks nothing like the real J-Class tender. Really don't know what they did there. But again, I don't think MTH or Scale Trains, because again, they're identical from the exterior. I don't think their J-Class looks good at all, especially for the price, especially considering they're like twice the price of these, which is pretty crazy. So anyways, and then finally the Bachmann engine. So the Bachmann engine actually looks pretty good. It's, again, Bachmann targets a more value-oriented modeler. They're not, their engines are intended to do not cost as much, and as a result, you should expect less from them. I think their 611 actually looks outstanding. Their nose also looks different than the BLI engine. One can argue, back and forth on which one's more prototypical. Whereas I think the MTH one is, again, generally agreed upon that it's weird. But the Bachmann one, I think what they did with the nose was, I think Bachmann's nose actually better depicts 611 as it is today, because I believe its nose was rebuilt sometime in like the 80s or whatever. Whereas I think BLI's nose, bullet nose, better depicts the J-Class as a whole in their in-service years. So one could actually argue that Bachmann's 611 model might be, better looking than the BLI one. I don't know. That's a whole rabbit hole I'm not going to go into. I am not an N&W expert, nor a J-Class expert, nor a 611 expert, but I know some people with opinions like that online, and I just figured I would share that for you, the viewer, to make your own educated decision on, or, just look at pictures and figure out what you like. But fun fact, I actually owned a Bachmann J-Class a while ago, like 5 years ago, one of their early Spectrum runs, and they actually looked pretty decent. Again, these engines in real life did not have a bunch of separate piping on the exterior or whatnot, so it was actually a really smart choice for Bachmann to make that engine. It didn't require a whole bunch of extra details, and I think they nailed the tooling, the overall shape of the engine quite well. Cutting in once again here to note that despite the fact that I praised the Bachmann J-Class a lot in this video, I did forget to mention that all of Bachmann's J-Classes, no matter which road name, including 611, have the same detail configuration. So they did not model the different appearances. They just modeled one J-Class and just put it under different road names. So they actually have the bell on top of the skyline, located on top of the skyline. They have the 611 style crossheads. They have the solid leading truck wheels, and they have the arched tender deck. So it's kind of like a fantasy version, which compiles some details from certain engines and others from others. So yeah, might not be the most accurate thing, but again, you're getting what you're paying for. They look quite good. I ended up getting rid of it just because I didn't model N&W. But they were a good engine. Now their drives were and they didn't pull that well. They weren't that heavy. They could have added more weight. Those can all be argued. But as far as appearance wise, the Bachmann ones really don't look that bad, and I feel like they get I don't know, people love to play that mind game of like, oh, I paid more for my engine, so therefore it's better. It's like, the Bachmann one's actually pretty dang solid. If you can get one for a reasonable price, it's honestly not a bad choice at all. I think they look pretty good. But if you were asking me for the ultimate, like, best looking, best running 611 or 611 or J-Class model in HO, I'd recommend a BLI one. I got this one myself for like $140. Great deal for this. This was not in the best shape. You can see there's actually a little bit like scuffing on the tender here, but again, very minor stuff. And overall, this thing looks fantastic. So yeah, great time. And the one thing is, I forgot to mention this at the beginning, but obviously the Paragon engines also have different sound systems. I don't really like the QSI sound in this engine, which you can hear in a little bit. Yeah, if I keep this engine, I was actually gonna just replace the decoder with like a TACS or maybe a ESU Loxon decoder and make this look like sound like a scale change engine. I could just do that if I wanted to. That's the beauty of installing your own decoders, So, anyways, but yeah, I wanted to make this video just because I actually really like this engine. I was very impressed with it when I first got it. And I felt like it deserved a video and a nice, props, good job BLI video. I don't feel like I do those enough. So that's what this one here. But hopefully this video was informative for you guys, for someone out there who is interested in figuring out which J-Class model is best for them. Hopefully this was, again, informative. I'm not trying to push anyone towards a, opinion, but hopefully, if anyone was wondering what mine was, that's what it is. And again, my goal is just to have people help people make informative decisions here. So yeah. Anyways, those are some differences between the various BLI J-Class versions, as well as my opinions on how they fare compared with MTH and Bachmann engines. If this was helpful and or entertaining, please let me know in the comments down below. I will make sure to post a few clips of this thing running, although I don't have any N&W equipment to run behind it at the really end of this video. But without further ado, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.